Okay, welcome everyone to our webinar, special webinar today on missed calls. There's people here, pet pack people here, there are people here who I haven't met before, and we have a special guest which is important, which is Sam Bowden, and thank you very much for coming, Sam. You all know Sam, I'm sure. And a couple of new things about the webinar from my perspective today. Many of you have been on our webinars on a regular basis. We're using a new system, which you may have used, called Zoom. And Sam has been using it for a long time, and I think it will be better because you can actually visualize what's going on. You can see us, you can see any drawings and that sorts of things. In terms of housekeeping or primary school, as Sam and I were just discussing, we will sit still, stop moving around. Please use your phones. If you, a bit of a radical thing, but we're doing a bit of online today, so just make sure you have a look at your phone if you need to. And we'll finish at 2:30. Happy to take as many questions as possible, and we'll try to answer those during the session. If we don't answer them during the session, either Sam or I will follow up with you afterwards, depending on who it's relevant to. And we are also recording it, so we will send out a recording at the end, which is great. So without further ado, in terms of the agenda, I'm going to start. So I'm going to be talking about how we actually detect missed calls. And that will go for maybe 10 minutes. And then Sam will talk about what you can do about it. So it's quite a natural progression. All right, so let's start. So, and can you hear me okay from, Sam, can you hear okay from there? So let's just start with missed calls. Now, most of you know that we do online marketing, and part of our process for clinics is analysing the performance of their website. Now, how many people are visiting the website, and how many people are actually calling the business. And the thing about tracking how many people are calling the business is that we stumbled across this concept of missed calls, or the reality of missed calls, because when we put a tracking system in place for a clinic, it records every single phone call that comes to the practice. It tells you who was calling, what the source phone number was, what time of day it was, and how long that phone call lasted for, or whether or not it was answered. So it didn't take long to realise by adding up those calls that clinics were missing 10 to 20% of their calls. Now that was a shock to us to realise that. And then we had a connection with a UK consultant, Alison Lambert, who was out here last year, and she said in the study she's done in the UK, she thought it was generally around 20%. So I would be confident for everyone here today who hasn't actually done the analysis, they'll be missing 10 to 20% of their calls. And it's easy to find that out by using the call tracking process that we use. And then, of course, Sam will cover what you can do about it afterwards. Now, I want to talk to you about 3 cases that we've worked with that illustrate the problem and then what they've done with. Now, the first one is a clinic in WA that I've been working with on Sam, which is why we're talking today. And initially, what we wanted to do was assess the performance of their website. So that's our online performance assessment. And part of that process was putting a tracking phone number onto their current website, because we wanted to know whether or not how their current website was working, what sort of business it was generating, the numbers of business, and then if we were able to if we put a pet pack website in there, is it going to make a difference? So what we found by putting the call tracking number in there was that they're missing 15% of their calls. So straight up, you've got something to work on there. Now, in talking to the owner about that, when I told him we're missing 15% of the calls, he said, I've been having some trouble with my phone system. I think that might be what it is. So he went and checked that, and he realised, no, it wasn't the phone system. That was actually working fine for the tracking period. It was the fact that the guys on the front desk were missing those calls, literally just missing them. So that means people are ringing. It's not being picked up in time, they're hanging up. And so the obvious impact is that they're missing business. Here's a couple of numbers for you about how, let's write them up, about what the impact of that is. So, if I just start with a new sheet here. A clinic's going to get about 400, a busy clinic, average of busy, going to get about 400 calls a month. Can you see that okay? Probably not.
That's good. Yeah, you've got very nice neat writing. You could be a school teacher.
Thank you. You've got 15% missed calls. You guys can probably do the maths quicker than me, but I did them before, so I'll probably be quicker. I can't do maths and talk at the same time. So that's 60 calls a month. Now, Sam and I were talking about the value of those calls. So let's say, we're being relatively conservative, it's $150 per visit. That's what you'd be expecting to pay. So the cost of that missed calls per month, 50 times 150, which is, gee, I'm good at maths, aren't I?
I have a calculator if we need it, James.
There you go. So $9,000 a month. I think it's important to highlight that because if you just talk about missing 15% of your calls, it might not excite you too much. But if you're missing $9,000 a month or around, that's a significant number. So obviously, there's a great opportunity to improve your performance in the practice by just dealing with this. Now, I've got another client who asked to put the tracking system in because he thought there was a problem in terms of missing calls. So not many people are aware of missed calls, which is why we're talking to you today. He had a suspicion. He found that he missed 1,000 calls between February and June last year. It's 1,000 calls. So you work out what the value is from that. And the important thing about what he did was that he actually responded. He restructured his front desk because he worked out with the call tracking data that he was missing calls at a certain time during the week. And you know, for a lot of practices, Monday is a difficult time, and so he's restructured his front desk. He's put another person on the front desk at certain times, given them a phone and a computer, and he's continuing to monitor the system. So in the first case study I talked about in WA, we're monitoring their phone calls for 2 to 3 months. But this guy, he's going to keep monitoring them forever because he thinks this 15% issue is so important that he wants to obviously keep it down to a minimum, but he needs to keep monitoring it as he goes. So that's an argument to keep doing it. But equally, you can do call tracking for 2 or 3 months, see how you go, and then you can do it again in 12 months or whenever it suits you to do it again. And then interestingly, the last example I wanted to talk to you about was probably the busiest practice in Australia in terms of online business. And we've been doing call tracking for them recently. And in November, they missed 30% of their calls. 30%. Unbelievable. Now, their average, or more often, the median, I suppose, would be the right calculation, is around 15%. But November's obviously bloody busy. You know, whatever's going on, missed 30% of their calls. The bottom line is, it's a problem for every practice. You can do something about it. And what we do for practices is we do this call tracking, and we do it as part of our online performance assessment. So I'll just show you in the last couple of minutes, a slide which talks about those 2 products. Just going to share a screen with you, which will come up, and I'll just make it put it up for you. So this is online performance assessment. This is what we use when a clinic wants to know how they're currently performing. So if we just go to the slide here, it might flick, which is going to be annoying. But let's say, so the online performance here is basically assessing how the current website's going, or whether you might have a new website, or you're not sure whether you want to spend money on AdWords or getting a new website because you've got an old one, you don't know how it's performing. This is a very, very good way to assess whether or not it's working. So in WA's example, we did this. And we found that some parts of their website were working really well, other parts weren't so good. And so that enabled the practitioner, the owner, to say, I want to invest in those areas that are not working well. And I think an important view that you had before we started this, when I said to him, look, are you interested in getting a new website? He said, look, James, I don't even know what my current website's doing. So why would I invest in a new website when I don't know if it's going to make any difference? And I think that is so valid. So this is a great way to assess your current performance before you start spending money. And the sort of information you get out of this, if you do the online performance assessment and you do call tracking at the same time, which I would recommend for the best objective measurement, is that you'll know, and I'll come back to my whiteboard in a sec, you'll know how many people are visiting you from online and how many people are calling, and that's actually the core bit of information we need to know. Now I'm just going to change to the call tracking slide, which will show you the info on So this is our call tracking information, which I've talked to you about mostly about this. And here's the solution that we use. We use a unique tracking number. So you get it's a special number that gets put on your web assets. So website, Google My Business, AdWords, and it replaces your primary one. So that people will call that new phone number, and then it gets redirected into your existing phone system. And as I said before, you can run it for 1 to 3 months. I think 2 months is probably your minimum, or you can do it ongoing. And then each month you get a report from us, which gives you all the detail of those. You can look at the specific detail of the phone calls and when they were missed, but you also get an overview as well from us. And finally, with this service, you can add call recording, which has been very successfully used by practices when they are doing training for improving your conversion at the front desk. So that's where, when the customer rings up, they get a notice beforehand saying this call may be monitored or recorded for training purposes, which people are comfortable with. And then you can play that back as part of your training with your team, and people can see how effective phone calls work and how less effective phone calls work. All right, so just coming out of that to what I want to show you now is what we want to do is for the people that are attending today, I want to do an exclusive offer for you guys on the online performance assessment and the call tracking. So I'll just write that up now. So with call tracking, you need to do call tracking for about 2 months. So in this case, I'm offering to do it for 2 months. So call track plus your online performance assessment. So that for 2 months, that normally costs, once again, I have to add up my numbers. So $925 for 2 months. What we'll do is for half price that. So we'll do 50% off. So that will be so for $460, what we'll do is we'll assess your online performance totally, including tracking your calls and giving you that call data. And once you've got that information, you'll be able to make decisions about where you invest your online money. So in the case of the WA case, for instance, they decided to go for investing in AdWords. They actually got a new website, but they want to invest in AdWords to get more people coming in, and also investing in their Google My Business entry. But you might find that you've got a lot of traffic coming into your website, but you want to improve the percentage that call you. So you do some work on the front page of your website, for instance. But the point is, by spending that money, you'll have the information to be able to go to your own web developer, because a lot of you guys have your own web developers, or you can come to us, we'll do it for you, we're very happy to, or you can do it in-house. Some people do it themselves in-house. And this will be valid for anyone that attends today, and it's valid for the rest of the week. If you'd like to, just contact me. So that's it for me, thank you. And now I'd like to hand over to Sam, thank you Sam, to talk about what happens once you get these missed calls report in front of you. What are you going to do about those calls? Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, James. And g'day to everyone out there. It looks like, looking at everyone there, it's half the UVG clan. So hi guys, good to see you in a different format and a few new people. So I want to just put this into 2 frameworks. There's 2 places I want to look at. Number 1, I just want to discuss a really simple technique for if the phone's ringing and not being answered. I want to give you a really simple strategy to help correct that. So, we talk about 10% of those calls are not being answered. And what happens is someone's ringing. If that phone rings for too long, they just hang up. Now, look, maybe some of those clients call back and maybe some don't. So it's not a real figure that we've lost at that business, but you saw the figures James did, pretty considerable business. This is what I call one of the pivot points of business. So when we look at a business, there's certain areas of low-hanging fruit that if you correct that, you see instant upside, and it's just about reducing what we call hemorrhage in your vet practice. So if you think about this line, this is sort of your pipeline of all the opportunity coming into your business, and then as you're going along, we start seeing a bit of hemorrhage, or you're losing business out of this potential business. So if there was no hemorrhage at all, this would be from the time that a client made an inquiry to your business If there's no hemorrhage at all, you're maximising that client's journey, serving as well as you possibly can, and we're not losing clients, we're not getting missed charges, we're not getting missed opportunities. So the first place, if you really think about it, is what we're talking about. It's right here at reception. So, really simple strategy. Strategy number one. By the way, as you can see, if this whole UVG gig falls over, I'm going to become an artiste. So, normally at reception, here's our receptionist, phone rings, Monday morning, flat out, and James, I understand that when you're tracking these numbers, you can actually see what time of the day you're missing most of those calls. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So we'd imagine, those busy times between 8:30 and 10 in the morning and that, it's kind of like that's when your phone's going into a bit of overflow. So the simple strategy we did, because there's a couple of options. One, you can go, well, I need to put another receptionist on. But you go, it's not that efficient in business because it's only part times of the day. So this is literally what we did. We created just an understanding with our team where we call the backstop. So our first person, our happy little receptionist, by the way, if they're not happy receptionists with big smiles on their face, my question is it's probably costing your business right there. That's a whole other story. But they answer the phone. Now, the golden rule is this. Within 1 to 3 rings, they should have answered that phone. And this becomes really important when we look at the strategy because our next person, our backstop number 2, they're not quite as smiley. They're out the back sort of dealing with stuff. They don't have to be so chirpy. Backstop number two, and it's not BS number 2, it's backstop number 2. They know if it gets to 5 rings, it's their turn to pick up the phone. So even though they're out the back, they don't need to look around or anything. It's literally, if they hear that get to 5 rings, they go, that's my turn to pick it up. Backstop number 3 can be, and who we got? We got the receptionist here. Who have we got here? This might be the nurse this might be the surgery nurse out the back that's not quite so busy through that period of time. Who's backstop number 3? Backstop number 3 is normally who's the other nurse or another supporting person, or if you're a smaller practice, it might be the vet themselves. However, they know if this gets to 7 rings, that's there to pick up. So all we're doing is, what's really important is that on each day, your team know what order they're the backstop in. So we used to have, our whole thing was, if you were surgery nurse, you were backstop number 2. If you're consult nurse, you were backstop number 3. Or actually, no, backstop number 3 was often the vet that was out the back ready to go in surgery. So we all knew 1 to 3 rings, they're going to get that. If you heard that go to 4 or 5 rings, number 2 would just go, I know they're tied up. They don't need to look. They don't need to look around. They just know they're tied up. They've got to, and backstop number 3, if it gets to 7 rings, they just go, right, I just need to go get that call. The beauty of this is what it does, it helps you through these busy periods, which is early mornings, later afternoons, and normally there's only one part of your business generally busy at a time. So normally if you're really busy out the front and 2 to 3 man practices, busy out the front, not so busy out the back. When you're really busy out the back, not so busy out the front. So what this allows you to do is be able to not miss those calls using the team you've already got. And I'm just going to have a look there. There's just a chat there. Yep, no, James is just saying let us know if you've got any questions. So if you've got any questions we're going along, please just chuck them in the chat box there. So that's step number 1. Now there is a point. We run a mastermind program, and as part of that, we sort of get people to assess. We mystery shop their practices, and we find out what's going on at their front desk. And they actually found that they, just by calling, this is the business owner just ringing his own business at busy times, found how many times he was almost hanging up because it was taking too long to answer the phone. Now, they chose to actually have a second receptionist or put one of their other team on reception for that period of time. So the fear thing comes up, won't that cost me some money to put another person on, or, far out, we're getting another nurse or another receptionist? The answer is this. Let's put some figures to it, or James has already done that. If each one of those calls equates to an average transaction value of $150, which is a pretty standard figure we'd look to aim for in a practice that's going well, it doesn't take too long. You're only going to get one of those a day, one extra call a day to pay for an extra receptionist. So First step would be try and maximise your team this way. When you're just humming along, you've got no time, and these guys are just flat out, there's no way they can pick up the phone, that's time to move to a second receptionist. And of course, you just want to have that overrun on your phone system. So when it hits the first number, you know, if that doesn't, it goes to the second line out the back, and if that one's busy, it goes to the third line or the fax line out the back. So you do need to have that kind of technology in place, which you can talk to the technology people. But it's really important that that phone, when it's rung, it gets picked up, because that is the gateway to your business. So that's step one, is just how do we stop missing those calls? The second part is this. What actually happens is the other part of missed opportunity on the phone is, here's a statistic for you. In Australia, I have measured this. Digital Gelden has measured it. I'm not sure if James has measured it. I know in the UK they've measured it. In the US they've measured it. This is what we find. When someone rings and makes an inquiry, so an inquiry, we call one of these three things. Either A, how much is it to bring my pet in to do X? So we often go there, price shoppers. Number two is, can you give me some information? So that maybe they've got a new pet, maybe they're new to an area, but they're just seeking information. Inquiry style number three is, look, my pet's a bit crook, or it's a bit lame, or it's scratching. What do you think I should do? And of course, what we know for a fact is that the best, who's best at answering, you know, the most advanced nurses, if they're on the front desk and someone rings up, they just so often jump to that, I'm going to try and solve the client's problem over the phone mode. Well, that's costing you $150 every time it happens. So I'm just going to put some figures briefly to this. If we're getting, this is a statistic in Australia, 30% of those calls are currently being booked to an appointment. 30%. That's pretty frightening. So let me put some maths behind this. Let's make a couple of assumptions. Let's assume that your average transaction value is $150. And let's assume that you're getting, I'm going to call 10 calls per week. Let's assume you're getting 10 of these, what I call inquiries a week. Now, if we look at that, the statistics, if you're getting 10 a week and you're currently at 30%, you're capturing $450 a week of revenue. Great. What we know is that with training, there's two parts of training. One is having the right person on the phone. And Tony, I know that you've seen the difference between someone who's average on the phone and someone great on the phone, the instant impact in your business, or whatever you're sharing with me. We know that this will move to 80%. This is a measured conversion rate. Now, if we work on 80%, we're getting 8 times 150. And like James, I completely cheated. So we're talking $1,200 a week in calls, in business, instead of $450. So the difference between those two, if we look at that a year, we're talking $39,000 a year just in missed opportunities on inquiries. I'm talking about one tiny fraction of your business. This is another what I call pivot point. So I think what's the important thing is going and saying, is there all this business coming in that's just hemorrhaging at the front step that I could do something about? And how do you go about doing it? Well, there's two places to correct it, or two areas I look at correcting it. So the first area is that there's 3 steps that you do. Number one is you really need to get the information, you need to do an analysis. So James has talked about tracking to go, well, how many calls am I missing? And the second part of that is actually assessing to see, well, I'm missing all those calls, but how many inquiries am I missing out on as well? Because my team aren't trained on how to book them in. So the first step is doing an analysis. And how do you do that? That's pretty simple. You can use we use what's called a mystery shop process. And what we do is we assess in 5 areas how your team goes. So literally we ring them up, do a price shop and say, hi, I'm looking to book in my dog. Can you tell me how much it is to spay it or vaccinate it or do a dental or whatever you choose to nominate? What we will find, I'm going to give you a fascinating statistic. Have a listen next time you hear this on the phone. So part of, our mastermind programs and things like that, we actually hook up and we ring practices in front of the room. So we say, who wants to test their practice now? And someone goes, I'm going to go, great, let's ring your practice. We put it on loudspeaker and everyone has to promise not to giggle. So there's 20 of us sitting in the room, we ring this poor hapless receptionist and go, hi. And I'm, we say, I've got my dog, his name's Bozo. And so we ring this clinic. And I'll say, how much is it to de-sex my dog? This is the standard process that's being followed every time. First, what type of dog is it? That's the first, and they go, sure, what type of dog is it? And I'll tell them. They go, second question, how much does it weigh? Now, if you want to throw a receptionist into a spasm, you say, oh, it's somewhere between 18 to 22 kilos. Why is that throwing in spasm? Because just about all vets have this cut-off on price at 20 kilos. So if it's 20 kilos or less, it's one price. 20 kilos or more, it's another price. And then the third thing they'll ask, so they'll ask, how much does it weigh, what sex is it, and what breed is it? That's it. And then they give you the price. Now, when we show people, and there's a 5-step process to actually turn these conversions around, and we start shopping and calling practices, that is the stock standard in every business. What we know for a fact, that's going to fit into 30 percentile. So the first step is actually analysing and seeing how is my front desk doing. And James talked about being able to listen to recordings. It's so valuable because you think everything's going great, but trust me, when you actually ring your own practice and yet someone else do it and you listen to what's going on, you start going, wow, there's a lot of opportunity there. The second step is always having the right person. So this we rotate our nurses, they all take a turn on the phone, is a really bad idea, by and large. Why? Because if you get someone who's a specialist on the phone, they just have this added energy. It's like this chirpiness, this energy. They seem to know everyone's pets and they become super efficient too. And what we'll know in every business is if you want a surgeon and you want a really good surgeon, they tend to specialize in one area. In human, medical, same thing. Same with what we do on the front desk. And there's a bunch of nurses go on the front desk who really don't like it because they're introverts. Number 2 is making sure you've actually got the right person who enjoys that being on the phone and that public interface. And number 3, of course, is, how do you stop it? Is just teach them a process. Now, and what I'm talking about in the process, we use and anyone who's been in I can see Johnny there, Mr. Wright, and Tony, you've been part of the mastermind program. We teach a 5-step process that if the team follows this 5 steps, so whoever picks up the phone, if they follow these steps, you will go from a call to a conversion or a consult in 80% of cases. This is how you start fixing this part of your business that's not working so efficiently. So there's 2 parts I've just talked just in summary. The first part is going, can I put a system in either using technology that allows my phones to override so I'm not missing that phone call? And 2, can I have my team go to the backstop system so that we know that we're going to get as many of those calls as possible? And then I would certainly suggest putting that in place and using James's tracking system to be able to say, okay, how are we doing? Are we getting down to we're only missing a few calls a month, which is obviously ideal. And then the second thing is going, okay, my person on the phone, and that is the doorway to your business. That is the front door. That is the window shopper screen of your business. What's happening at the front of it? And are we getting those conversions? And so what I'd love to teach you the process. I certainly don't have time to teach you this 5-step process now, but what I would like to offer you is this. We'll just, I said to James I'd offer something. Normally we charge $197 to someone if they'd like us to do this mystery shopping process for them. So we do a full analysis. What we do is we call the practice, we record the call, so you'd receive the recorded call, you'll receive a written report, and you'll receive what we call a benchmark call, which is how we would take the similar call that was handled at a very high level. So it gives you kind of a platform to know, okay, now I know what it should sound like. So you can either use that to train your team or just have a listen to sound the difference between what your team's doing and what could be happening in terms to get to that high percentage conversion. And the last thing that we do is we give a full written report on that. So what we do, I just a value offer for you. I'm going to do 5 of those for free. If you want it, you just email James, please, and James will he'll send an email through to me and say, so-and-so would like you to do a mystery shop. We'll get in touch with you and organise to do it. So it's not $9.97, it's actually free, but it's only for 5. Obviously, we'll get a bit inundated otherwise, so first 5 in wins. Just email James, and we're happy to offer that as just to allow you to do the first step of the process and see. And of course, if there's more stuff, if we feel we can help you, we can have a conversation around that. And maybe it's relevant for you, maybe it's not. Maybe we'll go, you know what? There's some businesses we ring and go, you don't need it, you're ripping. That's around about 1 in 15 is the statistics we see. So, back to you, James.
Thank you very much, Sam. Great info, and thank you everyone for attending. Now, I'll put my contact details up. It will be on your email. But let's just say we've got. You can email me, james@petpack.com.au. And one thing I didn't say, which I need to mention, is that for the call tracking process, which we've got the special on, there are costs for calls, which would be about $50 a month. And that's what we pay the phone company to run the calls. And it varies from but about $50 a month. All right, thank you, everyone. It's 2:31. I think that's pretty good timing. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Sam. That was excellent. And any questions, please email myself or Sam, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. All right, guys. Thanks very much. See ya.
Bye, guys. And see those that we're going to see at boot camp. Look forward to seeing you there.